All right, so we should have just finished our lists for what we think is in a fairy tale, if you were following along with my read aloud of the Frog Prince. And now we're going to talk about those lists. So I made a list for myself, and I want you to compare it to the list that you wrote. Feel free to add anything else to your list, okay? And I really, really wish you could share with me your list. It's a bummer that we can't do that because it's how we would do this if we were in the classroom. But if you want to take a picture of your list and upload it to your portfolio, I would love to see them. But let's get started. So before I show you my list, I just want you to know that not every fairy tale needs every single thing in this list. Okay, you can have a couple of them, you can have one of them, you can have, you probably will need at least some of them, but it doesn't need everything. These are just some key ideas that fairy tales usually have. But just to make it short and simple, a fairy tale is a made believe story that usually has magic or princesses, okay? And yeah, it's just a type of fantasy writing, which means it's not real. So usually they start with Once Upon a Time. The story we just read did not, but if you want to start off a piece of fairy tale writing, it's a good way to start it Once Upon a Time. A nice, easy way for us all to start fairy tales, and it would always be perfect. Another component that a fairy tale has is magic or spells. Think about the Frog Prince that we just read, right? The Frog Prince was put under a spell that turned him into a frog until he slept and ate in the princess's house for 3 nights. Okay, and then he turned back into a prince. That, of course, is magic. It isn't going to happen in real life. And it was a spell casted by a godmother. They also have evil characters or heroes. Sometimes they have both, sometimes they have none, but sometimes they have one and not the other. Think about in The Frog Prince again. The book we just read didn't introduce the evil character, but we know that the evil character was the godmother who turned the prince into a frog. And then I guess we could say the hero was the princess who turned him back into the prince. A lot of the time, the settings for fairy tale writings are in castles and forests. Think about the one we just read, The Frog Prince. That was in a castle. Little Red Riding Hood takes place mostly in a forest. Jack and the Beanstalk also takes place in a forest. Um, Beauty and the Beast, that takes place in a castle. So any ones with princesses and princes usually take places in castles, ones with animals more in the forest. But that is a good setting for our fairy tale writing because we know that all writing needs a setting. A lot of the time they have princesses and princes. The one we just read did. If we think to Cinderella, there was a prince and a princess. Snow White, right? I'm trying to think of other ones you guys might have read before. Rapunzel, Beauty and the Beast. So many fairy tales have a prince and a princess as the main character. There's also fairies and godmothers in a lot of fairy tale writing. Okay, Peter Pan has a fairy. Cinderella has a godmother. Most of the time, godmothers are nice, but in the book we just read, the godmother was more kind of like a witch and cast a mean spell. But godmothers and fairies usually have special powers and can cast spells, and they're magic in fairy tales. So again, not real. And a lot of the time they have happy endings. Okay, because these fairy tales are made for kids your age, right? And we love to read books with happy endings. It's the best type of book. So, if most writing that's a fairy tale ends in a happy ending, like The Frog Prince. The prince and the princess ended up together, right? That happens a lot too. So, take a look at your list If I were you, I think you should add the points that I made too, okay? Add them on to whatever you had. If you had more than this, that's fine. That's great. Okay? If you had something that you realize is not correct, go ahead and cross it out because we're going to kind of use these lists as a way to check our writing when we start writing our own fairy tales and making sure that our writing actually is fairy tales. And if you have the stuff that's on this list, then you are absolutely on the right track to writing a good fairy tale.